All right, hello, and welcome to our webinar today, which is titled How BrightEdge Achieves End-to-End Security Visibility with Splunk and AWS. My name is Scott Ward. I'm a Solutions Architect with Amazon Web Services, and I'm going to be your overall host for today's webinar. Additionally, we also have with us, who will be speaking today, we have Jay On, who is the Head of Security for BrightEdge Technologies, and we have Aaron Sweeney, who is the Senior Director for Product Marketing for Splunk. They will also be spending some time with us today during our webinar. So today's agenda, we're going to do a quick overview of AWS, the AWS Marketplace with an emphasis on AWS Security Solutions and Splunk. We're going to talk about BrightEdge Technologies and some of the challenges that they faced when it came to security. BrightEdge is also going to talk about their success story on AWS along with Splunk. We're going to give an overview of the Splunk solutions themselves and that have been featured in our story, and then we're going to follow it up with some Q&A and some discussion. Things that you're going to expect that we want to kind of help you learn about today are how proactive security measures can really help prevent breaches that can significantly impact your business, how you can get in front of those things and make sure that you're not having to deal with them on the back end, and how Splunk's analytics-driven approach to security can help you gain, an end-to-end visibility across not only AWS, but any hybrid environments that you might be running, and help you prevent or resolve threats that may exist in your environment. So let's start off with my part. We're going to talk about kind of an introduction to AWS security and things that you want to know and help you level set when it comes to understanding AWS and running security on AWS. So to start off with the data that you generate as a company and your intellectual property are your most valuable assets. It's what defines you as a company. It's what helps you to differentiate yourself from other people. So protecting that information is really valuable. And some recent studies have found that when there is a data breach for a company, that the average cost of that breach towards that company, as far as impacts of that company, around $6.5 million. There has been an increase in the increased theft of intellectual property. That's up over 56%. And when polling consumers and giving their thoughts around what they would do with businesses that have actually reported a security breach, found that about 70% of consumers said they actually avoid these businesses following a security breach. So you can see that the impacts of having your intellectual property or your data compromised can be quite wide sweeping and can involve quite a long recovery time for you as your company. So you want to make sure that you are keeping in front of those things and ensuring that you're kind of putting attention on security so you're not having to invest your time on these particular areas. So when it comes to running on AWS, we feel that you can be more secure than maybe even in your own existing environment. There's lots of reasons, and some of them that I have highlighted here are the ability to get information around automated logging and monitoring. So the AWS platform provides a tremendous amount of information around what's going on in your environment, whether it be information about API calls made against your AWS services, log files that are produced from various AWS services that you're using, all of those made available to you to be able to consume and process quickly or use with a partner solution, as well as the ability to write your own scripts and take action on what's coming off of that monitoring information. We also simplify resource access, so everything in AWS that you interact with at the end of the day is an API. So you have the ability to not only interact with that stuff through the AWS Management Console in the browser, but also the ability to start interacting with those services through the AWS command line interface or through the software development kits. And what that enables you to do is start building your own scripts and ways that would define how you are going to interact with particular AWS services and start to define some controls and standards so that you can start enforcing security controls around how you are using and leveraging with and interacting with AWS services. We also make it easy to encrypt properly. So on AWS, we encourage our customers to encrypt their data wherever possible, and you have a lot of flexibility with how you're going to do this. You can encrypt your data outside of AWS and then send it to AWS, meaning you have full control over the keys and also responsibility for protecting those keys. But you can also use several AWS services for actually helping you to encrypt your data when it's on AWS, whether it be our key management service or a Cloud HSM, or even once the data is on AWS, you can still build and implement your own encryption processes. So we give you the ability to kind of own and control that wherever possible, and then be able to enforce strong authentication, whether it be enforcing multi-factor authentication on identity and access management users, whether it be tying federation into your AWS account back to your corporate Active Directory or LDAP store, being able to fold in another identity provider who's enforcing their own approaches around multi-factor or authentication. You have the ability to implement that and control that around your AWS account in a way that helps you feel most comfortable with your particular security profile. We talk about security on AWS. One of the really important things to make sure we understand is that there is no one party who's fully responsible when it comes to security on AWS. It's shared between the customer and AWS. So on the AWS side, we own the security of the cloud. So we own security for all the global infrastructure. So all those facilities around the world that are actually housing AWS infrastructure, we are responsible for the security of that infrastructure, the facilities that are holding that infrastructure. We're also responsible for the security of kind of those foundational services around compute, storage, database, and networking, kind of the core things that a lot of people and a lot of AWS services will be leveraging to offer up additional services and solutions on top of AWS. And then as a customer, you own your security controls on AWS. So that'll start with any security configurations you enable with AWS services you might be running, as well as defining and implementing what you want for network security, defining and implementing what you want for identity and access control, both for your AWS account and for any other applications or services you may be implementing on AWS, defining and implementing what you want to do for inventory and configuration management, as we talked about before, implementing what you need for data encryption. And then customers own their applications and their content on top of AWS. So any applications or platforms that you implement, you own the security for those applications, as well as understanding who can log into them and what responsibilities and access they have. And then as a customer, you own all the content that you're storing on AWS. So you determine which AWS services you're going to store that information in. You're responsible for knowing who should access that information and who can access that information, and for defining how you're actually going to encrypt that information at the end of the day. So we talked about monitoring your environment, and there's lots of different ways you can actually go about that on AWS. And a key one here is CloudTrail, which actually lets you monitor and record all of the API calls that are happening against your AWS services. So giving you complete visibility into every API call made within your AWS account or your accounts against actual AWS services. Products like Amazon Inspector that actually assess your applications for vulnerabilities for things that are running on EC2 environments. VPC flow logs, which actually is going to give you information about traffic that is flowing in and out of your VPC, so you can start to see who's talking to who and who's talking to you within your cloud environment. Product like AWS Config, which gives you an inventory of the services that you're running in AWS and the actually visibility into those changes over time, so you can actually go back and see what's changed and what it used to be. There's also services that were just announced at reInvent, such as GuardDuty, that's going to allow you to monitor additional security type events with a combination of CloudTrail and flow logs of where there may be potential security events within your account or within your AWS infrastructure. You also have the ability to control and protect your data, as we talked about, and that starts with where you're placing your data. So there are 16 different regions around the world currently with AWS that contain 44 availability zones, allowing you to run highly available and fault tolerant, but also giving you the ability to control where your data is stored based on your requirements. And that could be simply where you want that to be as a business requirement, or you may have some sort of compliance requirement that you're trying to meet that says that your data needs to be able to stored in a particular part of the world that needs to be able to stay there. So that gives you initial control over your data. The services such as AWS Shield will actually help protect your infrastructure and your applications from DDoS attacks. As we mentioned before, you can implement the encryption you need. So whether it be server-side encryption or client-side encryption, you can implement what you need to be able to protect the data that you're storing in AWS. You can also integrate what you're doing on AWS with a lot of your existing resources. So if you have a lot of things running on-prem already that you are well established with and comfortable with, you can continue to implement those, whether it be bringing them on or hooking them up to your AWS account in a hybrid fashion. So integrating with your existing Active Directory and being able to continue to integrate your new AWS workloads with your existing corporate directory or using an identity provider that would also tie in with your Active Directory install. You could continue to use that. You can implement dedicated connections to AWS, kind of giving that low latency, consistent private traffic from your data center all the way into AWS. As we mentioned before, you can provide and manage your own encryption keys if you choose. You can actually choose to manage those entirely outside in an application that you own, or you can even use your own keys and implement them into several of the AWS encryption services. And most importantly, one of the reasons that we're here today is that you can actually implement partner security solutions on top of the customer portion of the shared responsibility model to really help you achieve the particular security profile that you're trying to meet. So when we talk about security with our customers, a lot of our customers have security concerns because there are requirements that they must meet when it comes to compliance. And this slide shows a small collection of compliance organizations that AWS is working with today. I can tell you that there's a lot more. If you go to our compliance page, you will see many more. And so we work with these compliance organizations and third-party auditors to help us understand what we need to do and implement the requirements that they need for the AWS portion of the shared responsibility model. And then we make those attestations available to our customers so they can see how we are implementing these controls and meeting the requirements of these compliance organizations. And that helps our customers then be able to build and implement their applications and services on top of AWS and still be able to maintain compliance because they're able to take care of what they need to do at the application level. AWS is taking part of the infrastructure level, and they're able to kind of combine all that together to show that they're a fully compliant solution running on top of AWS. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to BrightEdge to talk about how they've been able to kind of use Splunk Cloud, AWS, and implement and boost their security profile. Off to you, Jay.
Thank you, Scott. This is Jay An with the Head of Security at BrightEdge Technologies. I'm going to give you a brief introduction of BrightEdge Company here. BrightEdge Company is a global leader in SEO and content performance marketing organizations. We helped delivering value to customers. In 2016, over $65 billion revenue generated through our BrightEdge platform. And we are a market leadership. We have 1,500 plus direct customers. And we also have lots of innovations. We have 8 major software releases every year. BrightEdge global coverage, we cover 7 major search engines. That includes Google, Yahoo, Bing, Baidu, so China, and then Yandex, and Naver in Korea. And we also cover 165 countries worldwide. Here's a sample of BrightEdge product view. These are the kind of dashboards that digital marketing professionals use. They use this tool to help their own organization's website to be found on the internet. BrightEdge's reputation in SEO is we have been ranked as one of the top companies in SEO space. And in terms of BrightEdge security challenges, BrightEdge is a software as a service company, and our business depends on our software platform running 24/7, 365 days. So our customers expect BrightEdge to continue innovating our core software technology to help customers to be successful in digital marketing. Customers also expect us to have at least 99.9% uptime. And customer also expects us to protect their data from unauthorized access or change. And the customers also expect us to maintain good security posture. And then they also want us to be validated by independent security auditor. So it is important for us to maintaining our ISO 27000 certifications. We also engage a third-party independent auditor to audit us every year. So another internal security challenge is our senior executive and board of directors also expect our information security department to protect the company's intellectual property and trade secrets. They also want us to provide a secure corporate computing environment for 400 plus employees worldwide. And we're growing. We've been growing almost double digits every year. To ensure also confidentiality, integrity, and availability of our environment, and also the system, protect the system that processes over 20 plus petabytes data, and then to keep growing. And also, most importantly, maintaining companies' secure reputations. Key common threats that BrightEdge will face. Unlike financial institutions or maybe healthcare provider, we are not processing any personal information or financial data. However, we are still subject to software vulnerability exploitation, random or targeted denial of service attack on the website or infrastructure, and also natural disaster or other unexpected catastrophe, and also malware infection and spreading. and also insider data theft or sabotage. So there are many subject areas in information security to address these challenges, but we're going to only focus on 2 areas today for our presentation. The first one is the high availability infrastructure and threat monitoring and detection. High availability infrastructure. So BrightEdge, we need a really good infrastructure to keep our system up and running all the time. It has to be a secure and reliable and resilient infrastructure for our software service, and also easily scale as the business requires. No upfront large capital investment, no daily hardware equipment maintenance work. And also, we need a business partner with the highest reputation in their service. We're not just looking for a service provider. This is because our customer also demands the best of the best. So solution is Amazon Web Services. Why AWS? Well, we use AWS because it's a global infrastructure with the highest reputation in cloud computing. And it is also designed for security. And also it has ISO 27000 certified, just like us. And also it has SOC 1 and SOC 2 audit reports we can leverage to make sure that it's meeting its security requirements that we have. And also Amazon Web Services has now service protections, and it's also full disaster recovery ready infrastructure. AWS also provides high availability of its services, and the most also importantly, scale to meet our customer demands needed. So that's high availability. Now we're going to review these threat monitoring detection requirements that we have. Intelligent security monitoring solution that we really needed this solution that quickly detect threats and alert our technical operation team and InfoSec department. We can minimize the risk of encountering security breach, but we cannot completely eliminate the security risk. Threat deterrence is key here. We also have to assume that security breach will occur someday because people make mistakes. We are all people. Everybody makes mistakes. And people write bad codes, and then it creates bugs in the software, and it causes vulnerabilities, and then also become a victim of phishing, and also inside the threat is real. This could happen to almost any organization outside. You can have the best technology out there, but however, security breach will occur one day. So if a security breach occurs, then a fast detection and response can significantly minimize the damage and the exposure. And rapid response could actually stop the data breach. So we needed a solution that can be easily integrated with our multi-layer defense architecture. Our system architecture will slow down the process of a security breach becoming a data breach, but we needed a tool that can quickly detect real threats and detect a security breach. So the solution we have selected was a Splunk Cloud. Why Splunk? Well, Splunk Cloud is an isolated and secure from the an internal environment because it's a cloud. It's a completely isolated environment, and that even our technical operation team do not have access to. And also, it has a scalability to meet our customer demand as needed, and also provide high availability of its services. Also, it reduce operational support costs. Then we hosting the application internally, and also speed incident investigation response time. It can also provide the analysts with a rich contextual information with informed decision making. It also has a large community with many free apps, which is great because we're a startup company. We have a very limited budget how much we can spend on security. Having this software that has a community supporting the application is a great help to us. Solution. So how is it deployed? We use a risk-based approach in threat monitoring to prioritize alerts based on risk threshold and reliable threat information sources. We receive threat intelligence data from multiple external sources, and also vulnerability management system and data integrations. And also we receive logs from infrastructure from AWS and firewall, IDS, and also logs from our business applications such as CRM and also cloud storage and etc. And we generate alerts based on our risk score of these applications and then their threat score as well. And then we create a work task for the secure response team so that it's basically it creates a tickets within the security organization to address those incidents automatically. So we're putting all these things together. So we have, as you can see on the far left top corner, is BrightEdge software as a service infrastructure. And also we have a security management. We have a completely separate virtual private cloud, and we have all the security applications. And also there is Splunk Cloud, which is on the bottom right-hand side corner. So as you can see, they're a completely isolated environment. They're all kind of securely connected. And we also have our own data centers. Those informations are forwarded to Splunk Cloud. So if you put them all together, and then we get, here's some sample Splunk Cloud view. Many of these applications came with the community within Splunk. So we didn't have to pay extra money for that. And some of the applications you can up and running within a day because it's so easy to integrate it with our infrastructure. So enterprise-wide visibility. So implementing Splunk Cloud, it helped us. From security perspective, now threats are monitored, alerts are generated based on risk. And security investigation that took nearly 3 days, now taking less than 1 hour. The compliance perspective is an automated process to ensure security incident response are consistently followed. In the operation perspective, service had no downtime since the deployment. Also, no internal technical infrastructure support resource required to maintain Splunk and its applications. An application development perspective, it actually enabled real-time visibility into our internal operation activity, especially like DevOps team, without slowing down the overall SDLC process. Open source for Splunk. There are a bunch of other open source log monitoring software outside available in the community. But however, Splunk Cloud is operational in 1 day compared to if you use open source, it would take several days to get it up and running. Open source would require at least 2 additional headcounts, and perhaps even you had to build additional applications to get close to the baseline feature parity with Splunk. Splunk has apps available for some of the most leading and emerging security vendors, such as Cisco, and Juniper, and many other vendors outside. Another great thing about this Splunk Cloud is no infrastructure to manage. If we have open source, you have to have a server on your own, you have to install it, and there are so many things that you have to do. Return on investment using Splunk has exceeded the benefit of using open source solutions so far for us. Now, there are also other monitoring needs, such as high volume, less critical, simple logic that open source could be better suited for from cost-saving perspective. Highlights since the first launch of Splunk Cloud. Splunk has detected multiple intrusion attempts that no one had expected. Once we start monitoring all those logs, we will identify some of the network vulnerability that we didn't know that existed. So that was very helpful. And also, Splunk had detected malware infection in the endpoint computing devices within our network that even our anti-malware software could not detect. That was also very, actually, that was very awesome as well. Splunk detected the corporate data export policy violations as well. There are a lot of internal people who like to download information, not for the malicious purpose. They just wanted to keep it on their computer, but also data corporate policy is against that. So we were able to use the Splunk to detect those export policy violations and then alert the users that they shouldn't be doing it anymore. And also, another thing, the great thing about using a Splunk Cloud was that we impressed our clients' own security auditors with our security operation capability. In fact, one of the largest financial institution is our client, and the auditor was very impressed. Actually, he was chuckled and saying that, "Hey Jay, you are actually trying to show off your security capabilities." So, which was really good because we want to maintain good relationship with our clients. Summary results. Since deploying Splunk solutions for analytics-driven security, BrightEdge has seen the benefits including correlates with multiple data sources and eliminates the need to build multiple applications ourselves. And also seamless integration with the CRM and other cloud applications. And also it helped us to comply with the ISO 27001 and also other security standards. Splunk Cloud also stopped the security breach by quickly detecting and threatening responding to incidents through automation of process. And also it also helped stop malware spreading. So that's from BrightEdge.
Great story, Jay. Thanks for sharing. So I'm Erin Sweeney. I'm with Splunk, and really excited to build a little bit more on Jay's story of how customers can use Splunk for security. So Jay gave you an overview of how BrightEdge is using Splunk, but let me cover just a bit more about why Splunk can be important for those of you getting started on your security journey, on your cloud journey, or just looking for better ways to secure in the cloud. So you'll recall Scott said that AWS secures the cloud, and you're responsible for securing what's in the cloud. So that's where Splunk can help, because you can't protect what you can't see, and you can't manage cost for what you can't see, and you can't extract additional business value for what you can't see. So Splunk takes an analytics-driven security approach to provide you with the end-to-end security visibility you need to help you secure and protect what's valuable to your business. So how do we do that? Well, Splunk makes your data visible, accessible, and valuable. I loved what Jay said about other solutions may give you data, but Splunk will give you answers. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we do that. Splunk is the platform for machine data. Splunk will collect all of your data into one place so you can search, analyze, visualize, and report on it to solve a breadth of use cases for IT, security, and the business. You can collect data from anywhere. Anywhere. We don't care where it lives. It could be on cloud, on-prem, from sensors, whether it's structured or unstructured data. Splunk employs universal forwarding and indexing technology to collect the data, or you can use Kinesis Firehose to send a breadth of AWS data directly into Splunk. So now you've got all of your data aggregated. Well, what's next? Well, search. You can search and analyze across all of your data. You can search using terms based on what you know about your environment, or use advanced statistical commands in the Splunk search language. Splunk applies schema on the fly technology, so there's no need to deploy a database or worry about pulling a predetermined schema together. The schema is applied at search time, so search is super fast, it's flexible and easy to maintain, and there's fast time to value. You can correlate based on what you know, be it an IP, a user, a status code, and then you can analyze to see who or what went where in your environment. You can also correlate alerts and set up threshold-based alerting to minimize alert fatigue and really focus on the signal versus the noise. And then from the searches you've already created, it's just a few more clicks to easily build visualizations and dashboards for what's important to you, your management chain, or your customers and partners. And it's all in a single platform, so you don't need to sew together multiple products or hire folks with disparate skill sets to set it up, manage it, and use it, or more importantly, get value from it. And of course, when we host it for you in Splunk Cloud, then that even further speeds time to value. So you can apply these activities and workflows across any number of security use cases. Splunk is a security intelligence platform and can address threat detection and response, malware, phishing, ransomware, fraud, insider threat, and many other use cases. If you have a security team and some processes in place, you may have or be interested in a SIEM, a security information and event management solution. Splunk offers Splunk Enterprise Security, ES as we call it, is a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant and can complement or replace your existing SIEM solution. It does all the things you would expect a SIEM to do with built-in posture and notable event dashboards, and processes and workflows to drive coordination across global teams and investigations. Our research team is also providing content updates, which provides threat intelligence along with recommended next steps to really act like an additional member of your security team, documenting best practices and aligning investigations to stages of the kill chain and the critical controls. And these aren't just single searches or dashboards, but rather they give you the ability to detect, scope, and remediate with confidence. And even further, we've integrated adaptive response so that customers don't have to manually get the answers that they need, or so that you don't have to manually get the answers that you need, but rather you can use adaptive response to fetch supporting or contextual details. So this is the equivalent of asking an initial question and then getting the initial answer back, but then all of the associated follow-up questions. So you might be saying, well, what is adaptive response? You totally just glossed over that, Erin. Well, hold on to that, and I'll come back to it in a minute. Because first, I want to talk a little bit more about this notion of shared responsibility model that AWS champions. So again, Scott said that AWS secures the cloud, and you're responsible for securing what's on the cloud. So Splunk can help you to deliver across all of the use cases I mentioned earlier, so fraud, insider threat, advanced threat, malware, phishing, as well as additional IT and application development management use cases. But we can do this across your entire AWS environment, coupled with whatever additional infrastructure or machine data you want to secure. You choose the best of breed providers or open source solutions for threat intelligence, network security, authentication, orchestration, automation, and odds are, as Jay mentioned, ticketing. And odds are, as Jay mentioned, Splunk already has an app or a partnership with those solutions to get data into Splunk with prepackaged searches, alerts, reports, dashboards to help you get value from that data source immediately. And then in some cases, we'll help you take the next step with adaptive response. So adaptive response automates actions. It's like collecting more data, or some example actions would be collecting more data to fully research or scope an event, to change or update policies, to close ports, open tickets, or follow predefined playbook actions. These can also be called custom alert actions in Splunk. And essentially, if there's a documented API, you can trigger an action in any other product or solution. And there's a lot more detail around all the ways we integrate AWS data sources, but I just want to cover 2 to 3-ish more that we announced at reInvent last week. So first, Splunk was a launch partner for AWS serverless applications. We delivered 7 serverless apps or blueprints to help AWS customers take advantage of best practices for leveraging AWS data in Splunk. One of which is an, air quotes here, single click, it's really a 3-click, deployment of all adaptive response components available in a template for AWS serverless repository. And you can do things like move an S3 bucket from public to private, start or stop an instance, create notable events, flag issues as anomalous for further investigation, and more. And then the other security relevant announcement we made last week was supporting GuardDuty as a launch partner. GuardDuty analyzes and processes VPC flow logs and AWS CloudTrail event logs. So essentially it's an IDS or an IPS. GuardDuty uses security logic and techniques coupled with AWS usage statistics to identify unexpected and potentially unauthorized and or malicious activity. So this can include issues like escalations of privileges, uses of exposed credentials, or communication with malicious IPs, URLs, or domains. GuardDuty triggers alerts via the GuardDuty console or through Amazon CloudWatch events. So essentially, GuardDuty alerts you when something happened, but it doesn't really give you the full context on the how. So we're sending those alerts into Splunk, or you can choose to send the alerts into Splunk, where you can then aggregate across availability zones, finding types, roll up, and again, just roll it up so that you can, again, focus on the signal versus the noise, but also allow you to investigate across your entire stack, plus correlate with other data in Splunk for comprehensive investigation and remediation. So I mentioned this earlier, but last week at reInvent, Splunk became the first and only partner to support Kinesis Firehose integration. So from within the Kinesis console, you can choose to push real-time data into Splunk. This chart gives you a quick view of various AWS data sources and the ways you can get data into Splunk to give you that end-to-end security visibility into everything on the cloud with Splunk. So this includes data from the Splunk app for AWS. So with the Splunk app for AWS, all of those data sources you saw on the prior slide, you can have visibility into all of that in the Splunk app for AWS, all of those data sources in the Splunk app for AWS. You'll gain visibility across usage, topology, security, timeline, billing, and other insights. Some of the security-related use cases we can address include a view into user activity, full audit trail, and the ability to detect anomalous behavior. We get user, VPC, authentication, and other security-relevant data from AWS, so you can get a sense of your full security posture. We capture changes, adds, and deletes to inventory and config, so you can automatically create a topology view and then continuously monitor the changes in your environment for security and for compliance reporting. So remember when Jay mentioned that his auditors were complimenting him on his awesome compliance? Splunk can help. So for network security, we capture VPC flow log data, and that flow data provides that additional context and richness that's particularly helpful for the security lens. And then again, if you have some services on-premise, Splunk gives you complete visibility across cloud and on-prem environments, so you have a true sense of your security posture and the ability to conduct comprehensive investigations and analysis. Customers like Jay at BrightEdge, as well as PagerDuty, Enernoc, Adobe, Yelp, Cox Automotive, City of Los Angeles, FINRA, Autodesk, they're all using Splunk to address these needs every day. Splunk has more than 14,000 customers globally and 7,000 specifically using Splunk for security. And this is companies of all organizations, really, of all shapes and sizes, from industries, and again, all over the world. And as Jay alluded, you can use Splunk beyond just security for a whole range of use cases across application management, IT operations, business analytics, industrial data, and more. So are you convinced? You want to get your hands on this stuff? Great. There's a free online experience. It's an AWS instance that's preloaded with data, and it provides video and documentation to walk you through an incident detection and some scoping exercises. So you can try that out right away, or if you're convinced and ready to get going and play with your own data, you can buy Splunk Cloud today on AWS Marketplace. You can load up your own data to get a better handle on your security posture right away. So thanks everyone for your time. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks Jay for sharing your super awesome story. And I wish all of you success in your security and cloud journeys. So Scott, back to you to bring us home.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aaron, and thank you so much, Jay. It's great to have your insights into kind of rounding out the whole picture. So we've got the AWS portion, we've got the customer portion, and the Splunk portion. That's been really great to hear. So we're going to take some time now and actually jump into some Q&A. First, I have a couple of recommendations for you before we jump into the Q&A. Take a look at how you should kind of find a way to have a seamless security solution fit into your organization and how that may help you. Take a look at how you ensure the solution that you choose actually has expertise on, in, and around AWS. If you're using AWS, you want to make sure that that solution understands AWS and security on AWS. And then, when you look at security solutions, end-to-end visibility is really important. And then also the ability to actually take action and follow security best practices are really key to being successful in having a secure and a solution running on top of AWS, as I think we saw today from Jay and from Splunk and Aaron as well. So with that said, I've got some questions I want to dive into, and the first one here is, Aaron, I'll probably rely on you first, and then Jay, I'd love to get your insight as well. The first question is really how much effort is needed to properly parse logs for various applications that are generating those logs. So obviously, Aaron, I know you guys have probably, there's probably more logs you have seen than haven't seen now at this point, but if somebody's got a custom application, they're feeding logs into you or something like that, what's kind of the process to actually get to turnaround time and be able to properly parse that stuff and make it available?
Sure. So, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. As I indicated, there are over 1,000, I think it's like 1,600 apps available on Splunk base that help you just get data in right away from various vendors. But then when you're talking about custom application logs, Splunk has some best practices that are documented on our dev.splunk.com site that just kind of give you some best practices for how to make, I guess, logs more valuable in Splunk when you ingest them into Splunk. So it makes it easier to correlate and just get more value from them and to do faster, easier troubleshooting, right? So we definitely have some best practices, but it's trivial / usually pretty straightforward to get data in. And frankly, Splunk actually started as our founders were developers, and they needed, they wanted to Google for IT is how they originally coined it. And so that was our initial use case, was to help developers better troubleshoot logs, hopefully before they got into production, but sometimes when they were in production.
Okay, awesome. Jay, what was your guys' experience? Were you dealing mostly with kind of third-party logs, or did you have a fair amount of kind of custom application logs that you needed to feed in as well?
Yeah, we have both custom application log and also third-party application log. If the data is a standard format such as syslog or application log, it's easy to forward the data and then make the Splunk to ingest the information and then create some dashboards and reports easily. Now, if it is a custom application log, you can still forward the data, but you have to make sure that you have to do a lot of planning in advance rather than just forwarding the data and hoping that something's going to come out. Well, something's going to come out, but it would take a little longer if you do that. So you have to do planning ahead, how you want to tag information. The key thing is you have to make the data in consistent format, especially if it is custom applications, and then you will be able to easily create reports of that.
Awesome, cool. Thank you very much, Jay and Aaron, on that one. A reminder to our audience, if you have questions, please put them into the question panel of your webinar tool. We'll happily get to those. Next question I have for you, Aaron, is What does Splunk have in the way of connectors to open source components like Hadoop and Spark, Mesos, etc.? What can you speak to around that area?
So we used to have or we still do have a tool that helps you easily pull data or store data into Hadoop. So that's Splunk Analytics for Hadoop. Um, and so essentially you can pull data in or choose to use Hadoop for your storage. But any data lake or database you can use to enrich data that's already in Splunk. And we also integrate with Amazon Elastic MapReduce.
Excellent, excellent. One question that's come up here that I have my own insight and thoughts on, but I think everybody's kind of curious about, Aaron, is guard duty. So guard duty supports several things that you guys already support, flow logs and CloudTrail. What do you guys see in the way of overlap, or what are you finding that complements or makes those two better together for Splunk customers?
Guard Duty plus Splunk? Sure. So, I mean, essentially, so Guard Duty is going to trigger alerts. There's some security logic that they've already built out. And what the key differentiation is, you could also do alerting in Splunk, but when you pull the Guard Duty alerts into Splunk, then you're able to do two things, really, is that you can pull the data in from across multiple availability zones, multiple accounts and regions. So again, it kind of helps you just look at or sort out the signal to noise, so you can understand if you've got something happening in this availability zone and something in this region as well, and correlate that together to know that I really need to investigate that. And then, so that's one piece, and the other piece is to really do your full scoping and security investigation. From within Splunk, you've got the ability to correlate across all of the rest of your data, so you can just fully scope the security incident and then take next steps to remediate. So those are the two key pieces. One is the aggregation across availability zones and accounts, and then two is the ability to do the deeper and full scoping, investigation, and remediation in Splunk.
Awesome. Cool. Next question here, I'm going to start off with, and then Aaron and Jay, you step in where you think you might have something to add, but it's kind of a question of how do you prevent extremely massive DDoS attacks. And so I can certainly say from the AWS side, we have our service, AWS Shield. There's a Shield standard that every customer gets automatically that gives some basic monitoring and mitigation around some common DDoS attacks. And then there's a Shield Advanced service that customers can sign up for that gives them advanced protections, advanced mitigations, gives them access to a 24/7 support team related to those types of things, as well as actual cost protection against some of your infrastructure if there was a DDoS attack that were to enable your costs to significantly spike due to the result of that particular attack. So we have some things there as far as our Shield service. We also have best practices and white papers and webinars that we publish around how to architect yourself to minimize or prevent DDoS attacks using some of our services like CloudTrail, or excuse me, not CloudTrail, CloudFront, and the Elastic Load Balancer and things like that. So we have a combination of on the AWS side of kind of a service and architecture patterns that help to guide customers the best that we can, or the best that they can, to be able to kind of help minimize the impact from that. And so, with that said, Jay and Aaron, what you guys can or can't say, or maybe Aaron, you have some thoughts on visibility you guys give around that, or Jay, maybe some thoughts around what you guys do there, as much as you're open to sharing.
Aaron, you want to throw first, or?
Sure. I mean, really, there's just two data points. Like Splunk Cloud runs on AWS, so so the protections you guys have in place protect Splunk Cloud. But then also Splunk has an integration with Shield via CloudWatch events. So so that's kind of how we manage for it. But it's not something that we've seen a lot of.
Okay.
For us, we use more like a multi-layered approach. We first leverage AWS, the denial service attack protection feature. And then on top of that, we also use our reverse proxy, which is NGINX, and have that there's a denial service attack filtering tool techniques to mitigate those risks as well. We also make the system to make it scalable so that if there is any massive CPU writers in one particular machines, we can easily detect that kind of issues and then quickly launch another machines and then drop that for first machine. That way, when you have the DDoS attack, you can actually slow down the attack so that you can prevent any downtime of your website.
Okay, awesome. That's great. Thank you, everybody, for that one. For Splunk, probably a two-part question. The first part is really advantages or disadvantages or maybe feature parity of Splunk Cloud versus Splunk on-premise. And then on top of that, what are some of the ways that somebody would go about migrating from the on-premise Splunk to Splunk Cloud if they chose to take that journey?
Sure. It's pretty similar between enterprise and cloud. It's the same, it's the same code base for the most part. So all the features, there's feature parity and the like. So if a customer wants to migrate, obviously Splunk Cloud is a fully managed version of Splunk. And so there are migration blueprints available. We obviously are going to partner with you to have a successful migration. Just in terms of how you do it, you'd want to, elements of your existing license are transferable. So you just want to chat with your sales rep to just kind of get a little bit more and build out a plan for what's going to work for you. But yeah, there's definitely migration blueprints and patterns for Splunk Enterprise on-prem to AWS, for Splunk Enterprise to cloud, or just Splunk on, if you're running your own instance of Splunk on AWS, migrating over to Splunk Cloud. We've got blueprints and ideas to help you make the transition.
Awesome. Very cool. When it comes to Splunk, do you guys have any experience kind of using the data from Splunk Analytics to predict the relative probability and cost of any future cyber risks that a customer may have? And it may be a pretty broad question, but I'll see what we can get out of it.
Okay, so can you repeat that?
Sure. So using Splunk Analytics, does
Yep.
Splunk have any experience in kind of being able to predict probability or cost of any future cyber risks that a customer may have based on the data you have available to you or the trends that you're seeing?
So, I guess what we could do is, we do a lot of ROI calculations and we look at, okay, if you've got this kind of downtime or if you've got this kind of, compliance issues or other things or investigations typically take this long and involve this many people, we can certainly do that modeling based on how large your environment is, how many endpoints you have, where your data is located, all of those different things. We can certainly do that modeling. I wouldn't say that we have necessarily done it on a customer basis, but we've got sort of broad ideas in aggregate of what our customers are doing and experiencing. So, but there are, just in terms of doing modeling or predictive, we have our UBA solution. There's a machine learning toolkit. There's different elements for anomaly detection and alerting that we've got, different applications of machine learning and AI across the different product suite, just to help you, calculate what these types of things might look like in your environment.
That's a great start. It was a very, very broad question, so I appreciate that. Jay, I'm kind of curious. So, you've got a lot of benefit from implementing Splunk at BrightEdge, and I'm kind of curious, what are the kinds of things that you and your team are now able to focus on more as a result? Or another way to put this is what do you now have time for that maybe you didn't have time for in the past as a result of implementing Splunk?
What I would like to do is that with the Splunk's continue renovating, innovating its features, such as machine learning capabilities. We would like to use that to make our alerts a lot more intelligent than simply based on the threshold or risk analysis. So if we can combine that with the machine learning capability plus with the risk analysis method that we've been using, I think it would have a more intelligent, more true positive alerts that we can get. I think the key things that we want to do is that if you want to avoid having too many false positive alerts, then what happens is then the security operation team tend to ignore or maybe they forget to respond to those incidents quickly. However, if they're only maybe 5%, if you can reduce the 5% or even 10%, or even much less than that, you can improve the alerts. Then we can be more responsive. So from that perspective, that's the thing that we would like to do, is that you would like to use the new features that Splunk provides and then make it our process more intelligent.
Great, great. I'm going to see if I can get this question correct, and Aaron, you can let me know if it just doesn't make sense and we can move on. But generally, analytics, when you look at analytics, you kind of get, it requires more effort than maybe traditional optimization, but it gives you more of a unified converged platform. When it comes to analytics, does Splunk support some sort of kind of what you would consider like an end-to-end network as far as being able to ingest and analyze and take action on that data? Does that even make sense? First of all, I'm trying to interpret a question, but you let me know if that resonates with you at all.
Well, let me see if I can take a stab. We can ingest any kind of data, and that's what's cool about Splunk is, again, you don't have to have sort of like pre-known queries or pre-known schemas to apply, right? There's a lot of flexibility, and we can correlate based on anything. So that's kind of like, I guess, the foundation of what we call analytics. And then from there, we've got some pretty cool, advanced, and hefty statistical commands that are part of the Splunk search language. So you can do anything. I mean, sorry, not anything, but like, you can do some pretty cool stuff in terms of standard deviation and to really sort of sort out the signal to noise to really focus on what's important to, your security investigation or your business. So that's kind of the one piece. And then we've also got, this machine learning toolkit that allows you to do sort of, if you want to build out your own sort of machine learning or AI types of analytics, then you've got that opportunity. We've got some pre-built options in enterprise security and UBA in our ITSI product. So I talked a little bit about adaptive response. And so for Splunk, our notion is on the security side that we can be the nerve center for your security operation, right? So if you think of what a nerve center does, it's going to sense and detect and respond. And so that's what we think of Splunk as doing, is that we can take all of the, sort of signals from across your environment, pull it in, and then you can send signals back out. So if you for example, see that there's PII via Macie in an S3 bucket, you can move that from public to private. And you can trigger that via Splunk. And there are many other things that you can do via adaptive response across any number of different partners that have built adaptive response integrations. I think we've got 60 plus partners who've already built adaptive response for Splunk. So often that's bi-directional communication. So it's not even just Splunk. It's not even just Splunk ingesting data and then sending things back out. It's an opportunity for us to take action in other vendor products. So closing ports, updating policies, shutting down instances, triggering alerts to help you further investigate a given thing, investigate a given user, and change user privileges. All these types of things that can just help you, when you're comfortable and ready to apply automation, then you can do that using Splunk. Of those 60 AR partners, AWS is one, and there's I think at least 10-ish, possibly more AR actions that are already built for AWS.
Cool. That's great. Thank you so much for that insight. I know we have a couple of pending questions, and we will make sure we follow up with those remaining few via email. So apologize that we didn't get to them during the webinar today, but we will respond. I'd like to first of all thank everybody for attending today, starting with all the attendees who called in and took time out of their day. I'd like to thank Aaron and Jay for their time and their insights. It's been really helpful. I really appreciate it. With that, once again, thank everybody for attending and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.